Hello everyone, my name is Kalina Drenska and I'm part of the feminist socialist collective LEVFEM. We are from Bulgaria and I want to talk a little bit about the situation of Bulgarian women during the pandemic. As in many other places around the globe, we saw also in Bulgaria how the healthcare sector is basically collapsing. And this was especially bad for workers in this sector. 98% of nurses in Bulgaria are women, and these women were forced to work in unbearable conditions without protective equipment, for miserable wages, one nurse per shift with 50 patients. So they were overloaded and overworked and overwhelmed to their limits. Many healthcare workers left their jobs because they didn't want to risk fighting a virus without protective equipment and risking their lives and the lives of their families. Of those who remained, many got sick with the virus and some of them even died. So basically we saw how healthcare workers are forced to sacrifice their lives and then were left behind without almost any support by the government for their work and for their conditions. What we saw also is that with schools closing and with kindergartens closing, many women started taking care even more of children, which meant that they lost their jobs because they were not able to attend their employment and take care of their children. Of those who remained at work, some needed to move to part-time employment, which means that women were left with much less money than before the pandemic. We also saw an increase in domestic violence cases. So we were told that we are safe at home and to stay safe and stay home. But we know that the home is not a safe space for many women out there who are struggling with domestic violence. And all of these conditions we share are not exclusive for Bulgaria. They are global conditions. They are conditions of women all around the world, because patriarchy is a global system. And what we saw actually during the pandemic is that, with the global pandemic, we also need a global resistance, and we cannot stay only with our own context. And given this, with LEVFEM and with other comrades, for example, with the Transnational Social Strike, we started organizing or coordinating a network called East, Essential Autonomous Struggles Transnational. And this is a network of workers and activists from Eastern and Central Europe, but also beyond. And we started organizing last year in June during the pandemic with the idea that the struggles that we see and face on the terrain of social reproduction could only be solved sufficiently when we work together and when we are connected and when we work on a regional and even transnational level. And it was a very powerful experience to see and to feel not alone during this pandemic and during the times of social distancing and isolation even. So this increased transnational connectedness that we experienced is a very powerful way for movements for movements to struggle together and to connect their efforts in something bigger than any single one of them took individually. Within the East Network, we also developed a manifesto for the 8th of March, where we call for essential workers' strike for the 8th of March. And this manifesto also inspired the local protests in Bulgaria. On the 8th of March, we are having a protest on the streets of Sofia, and the motto of the protest will be, women, essential workers, work on the front line, but they also have a double shift. So it's going to be a lot about essential work and care work performed, especially by women during the pandemic. But the protest will also talk about the strike as a weapon of women, of workers, of migrants, of all those subjects struggling against patriarchy and capitalism and racism on a global scale. So what we see in the Bulgarian feminist movement nowadays is this shift towards recognizing labor issues and recognizing labor mechanisms, for example, the strike, as essential part of the feminist fights, which is an amazing improvement or amazing development. And with LEVFEM, especially, we want to continue working with. We have worked and we want to continue working in this sphere. We want to approach unions, for example, because they are not very sensitive on feminist topics and feminist issues. So we want to start a conversation there too, and make women, the essential workers, the center of labor union politics and decisions. And with this being said, I want to I want to send you all a message for the 8th of March, which is a message of hope. I wish you a very powerful March 8th, and I wish you all that we continue struggling together, and then that we continue connecting with each other. And I wish you all that we shouldn't forget that if our work is essential, then our lives and our resistance are essential too. So powerful March 8th, everyone.